All right, give me 2 seconds. I will figure out an alternative.
Yeah.
Just to confirm, it hasn't started yet on the thing, right?
I don't think so.
Okay. All right then. For now your videos won't be there. I'm gonna stream it through OBS on my end, so you'll just have the PPT. I will just maybe if you give me another second, I will add this in as well. That is not okay.
That started.
Okay, are we live?
Yeah, you are live. We can see your face and also
Oh, okay.
thumbnails are popping.
Good to know. Okay, awesome. So hopefully my screen is visible now.
Yep.
Okay.
Okay, so we're not, but no need to switch on the webcam, right?
I think you can. So this is currently streaming through Jitsi itself, I believe.
Yeah, it is.
Okay. All right. Yeah. Sorry for the delay, guys. We will probably get started. Let me just. Yeah, you can go ahead, guys.
Can everybody hear me? Okay, give me a second. I can't hear anybody on the call.
Yeah, I can hear you.
Yeah, all right. Okay.
Yeah, you're audible.
So, all right. So maybe we'll just wait 1-2 minutes just so that everyone can join. I can see people are joining now. There are 19-20 people. Let's just wait for 5 minutes so that everyone can join in, and then we can begin the session. If any of you are on this call, please do just let everyone know that the session is about to start so that they can join in. Just tell your friends, just tell everybody that we're going to start soon. So, hopefully, we don't want to obviously extend this. We'll just wait for one more minute and then we'll start, just so that everybody can join in who is interested. Okay, so I guess we'll start. So whoever can join in can, obviously they can join in the middle of the session. We have three speakers and then they can obviously ask their questions. So, hey guys, welcome to today's one last time session. So today's day one, computer science, and I'll be your host. My name is Akshat, and obviously we have three speakers here. We have Mohit, we have Prajna, and we have Avikal, and all of us are from the batch of 22. And today we'll be sharing our experiences and how really we went through the whole master's process, and basically what sort of like we're going to be sharing our insights and probably some of our opinions as to what we really like experienced. So obviously the first thing that you that comes to your mind when you think about masters and PhD and higher education is a sort of nervousness and fear, because a lot of people are left a little bit clueless, or a lot of people don't exactly know what the process is, or are typically confused about the timeline and how exactly what exactly you could do to go study, especially if you want to go study in somewhere abroad, not in India. So obviously we'll be sharing our experiences today, and hopefully you can take something back and it'll help you on your journey. So to briefly introduce our three speakers today, so we have Mohit, who is will be talking about the MS application process. We have Prajna, who will be talking about whose talk would be more geared towards PhD. And then we have Avikal for all the core branch students who are looking to break into the circuit branch, because maybe you're not satisfied with it, or maybe you see your interests lie in circuit branches. So before starting off with Mohit, I think the first thing that everyone needs to understand before obviously applying for a master's is understanding your interests. So when you come study for bachelor's, you have programs that are very general. When you study mechanical engineering, or when you study computer science, or electronics engineering, you basically study like a broad gist of what the subject really is, and then you dive into the various different fields within that is encompassed within the subject. So when you do eventually graduate from with your bachelor's, you have like a basic idea of what that field is. And after that, it's about, if you do want to go study for your master's application, it's about wanting to know what exactly you want to do and where your interest lies within computer science or within electrical engineering, mechanical engineering, whatever. So understanding your interests and picking your major is obviously the main thing. And then from there, you can start selecting your colleges. You can start selecting what sort of location, what sort of job prospects you're looking for, etc. And that is obviously the first thing. So once you have once you do have your major in mind, then you can obviously start the process, and then you start to see what you really need to do, what sort of scores, what sort of colleges you need to pick. So that is obviously the first thing. So let's not wait any further. I'll introduce our first speaker for the day. It's going to be Mohit, and he's going to be talking about the master's process. So um, he's applied for Masters of Science in Computer Science, and he has various admits, including Georgia Tech. So yeah, I'll hand over the mic to Mohit now.
Thank you, Akshat. I'm Mohit Raghavendra, and I graduated from NITK in 2022 from the IT department with a minors in management. So if we can go to the next slide. So yeah, this is basically a profile of mine. I'll talk more about what I did during college in the next slide. But yeah, I had one student paper accepted and one under review. I applied to 4 places: Georgia Tech, Columbia, Stanford, and Carnegie Mellon for MSCS programs mostly. And yeah, I'll be joining Georgia Tech next year for MS and CS with a specialization in machine learning. Next slide. So yeah, this has been my journey so far. Mostly speaking from a computer science perspective. First year summer, I interned at Iris and NITK, and a year after that, I continued working there throughout my second year. The second year summer, I worked at IIT Madras as a research intern, and then in third year, I worked at Goldman Sachs as a software engineer intern or a summer analyst in their terms, and also I worked at Georgia Tech as a research intern during the summer. Now, right after that, I got a chance to work in the same group I interned at Georgia Tech for my bachelor thesis. So throughout my final year, I worked in Georgia Tech itself, completing my bachelor thesis in the same place. So yeah, this has been my journey in computer science. And as you can see, I've worked in research domain as well as software engineering. And I decided to pursue master's somewhere around, I think, end of second year, beginning of third year. And then after that, I tried to make my profile to suit master's applications instead. So yeah, next slide. So yeah, let's talk a bit about the MSCS program itself. It's a typically 1.5 to 2 year master's program in computer science, typically 3 or 4 semesters, I mean. Usually MSCS is a broad CS program that spans the entire computer science field, right from the fundamentals to some specific topic that you'll be interested in exploring later on in the future. But in general speaking, it's a CS program where you'll be trained mostly about the technical and fundamental domains in computer science. A lot of the CS programs have an option for either thesis or coursework. Thesis meaning you would work typically for 1 year or so under an advisor, typically a professor, and complete what is known as a master's thesis. On the other hand, this is more research-based. A coursework-based MS would typically only involve courses in all 1.5 to 2 years, and after that, you'll be generally prepared to apply for jobs instead of working in research later on. So yeah, these are the 2 options that a lot of programs have. Now, alternatively, there are specialized master's programs. You don't actually have to apply to MSCS everywhere, and a lot of universities are opening up, masters in machine learning or software engineering or data science, networking, security. So a lot of these allied programs also exists, where if you have already completely figured out what you want to do in computer science, then you can give a shot towards any of these programs which are specialized to your interests, where you have a higher chance of doing well. Now, there are also specializations sometimes in MS and CS itself, so that you can sort of mold your master's program towards that. Me particularly, I was interested in machine learning, and I found out that Georgia Tech has a machine learning specialization inside the MSCS degree, so I'll be joining that. So yeah, take care, do your research about all these things, specializations or allied programs itself, and make sure that you apply to the right program you're interested in. Next slide. Yeah, this is my application timeline, and keep in mind that this is something I followed because they were recommended by a lot of seniors. It's not a hard and fast timeline, but something that is safe. That's a safe bet, and you can make sure that you have an ample amount of time later on if some of these things don't go well. So like I said, I decided to do my master's sometime in my end of second year, and I tried to mold my rest of my BTech journey towards that. So I started working on my applications in July of my final year. So I would say right in the beginning of my final year, I started working on the actual application itself. So this would involve preparing for GRE or TOEFL. I'll explain each of these components later on. But yeah, I started preparing for GRE and TOEFL, the 2 exams you need to give for most master's degrees, sometime in June, July. And then I gave the exam in August, both of them. Then you'll also have to apply for certain documents from the administrative department. So typically, it's good to start doing that in September itself. Then comes the statement of purpose. And there are a lot of other writing documents that you need to submit, written documents, like personal statement, diversity statement, all that stuff, whatever is required in the application. So these things are extremely important and need to make sure that you start off early and do multiple rounds of reviews. So this would come sometime between September and November, where you create a first draft, get a handful of seniors, let's say, and then keep iterating through them throughout the length of the application timeline. Now, there's also one more thing that you need to figure out, which is letter of recommendation, which also comes around early final year, where you reach out to potential recommenders, typically 3 or sometimes even more if they don't agree to give to all the places. And then you would establish a timeline where they would submit it before the application deadline comes. So yeah, you also need to get that done before the application deadline. And then finally, the actual application itself. Most applications for all universities, each university has its own application portal, and you will apply to them individually most of the times. So you start your application on each university's portal sometime around October, I would say, when they open up. And then over the course of the next 2 to 3 months, you slowly start filling it in, and then you iterate through your LORs. And sometime before the deadline, hopefully pretty early, you would submit all your applications and then wind up your application process. Usually applications end around January, sometimes in February as well. So yeah, I submitted most of them by January and took October, November, and December to fill them up over the course of these months. Next slide, please. Right, so let's talk briefly about each of the application components. Now, these are not all of them. Some of them have their own unique application components. We'll try to keep them as generic as possible so that the other speakers can take up specifics which are related to their programs later on. Firstly, GRE and TOEFL. These are 2 exams that you need to give sometime before your application. GRE is a quantitative and English assessment test. It has a validity of 5 years, but a lot of universities are making GRE optional. So just do your research and figure out if all your programs need GRE or not. Now, on the other hand, TOEFL or IELTS sometimes are 2 English assessments. So these are required to showcase your English proficiency, and these are almost always required by most universities, unlike GRE these days. So yeah, both of these have to be given sometime in your final year or earlier before the application starts. And it's recommended that you do it as early as possible because they have a validity of a couple of years or sometimes even 5 years. So it's better to get it done early on and worry about your other application components. You also need transcripts and other documents. Transcripts is probably the most important one. There might be some others that are required by the university. Most of these have a form that you need to fill in, and then you have to email the respective academic department, and they would send it to you after a few days. Then comes the statement of purpose, sometimes also called a personal statement, or they could be 2 different things. Typically, a statement of purpose or a personal statement is a written essay by you that describes what your purpose is for doing the master's, what you've done before, how it leads to what you're doing right now, and what you're going to do later on after your master's degree, or what you want to do during your master's degree. So usually it's usually a mix of your personal anecdotes and your professional aspirations, or sometimes it could be a separate personal statement as well, where they ask you to describe who you are as a person. So make sure to read the exact guidelines of the university regarding this and make it to the university. Do not write a generic statement of purpose. Now, more on statement of purpose will be followed by other speakers. But yeah, try to make it as focused and as professional as possible, and do not ramble on about personal anecdotes and stuff. Next comes letter of recommendation. Typically, three letter of recommendations are minimum in most places in the US and most places for MS and CS degrees. And it's highly recommended to get it from professors you have a good working relationships with. They've either mentored you through internships or long projects or your major project, whatever. It's good. It's very, very highly recommended to get it from professors who know you well. If it's not possible at all to find 3 professors, sometimes a work or internship manager is also fine, but it typically wouldn't add much to your profile as a letter of recommendation from a professor. Now, the last part is the actual internship. You have to go to the university's application portal. You have to sign up, create the application, fill in all the necessary requirements, upload all the documents, and then pay the application fees. Voila, you're done. These are the components in an application. There might be a few more idiosyncratic components for each university, but those are generally meant for specific cases. Next slide, please. Right. Now, let's just go through some suggestions for the timeline. Like I said, the timeline I followed that I described earlier, and you can refer to that slide later on because it will be circulated, is the most safe and recommended timeline that was suggested by a lot of people. And a good rule of thumb is the sooner you get everything sorted, the better it is, because application deadlines, once they start, keep piling on one after the other, and you won't have time to tailor make your applications for each of them later on. So it's almost always better to be early than late in everything. So first thing first, decide the list of schools well in advance that you want to apply to, even before attempting GRE or TOEFL. And GRE or TOEFL is usually the first thing you do in your application. So decide, at least have 3 to 4 schools beforehand that you will be applying for sure. Because after you write GRE or TOEFL, you'll have an option to send your scores for 4 universities for free. And this is where you can fill in those 4 schools in the beginning itself. So this should be the first thing you do. Do your research, find out the schools you want to apply to, and shortlist a set of universities. How to shortlist and other stuff will be taken over by other speakers later on. But yeah, do that first and as soon as possible. Next, finish your GRE and TOEFL ASAP. Best time would be to prepare in the summer after your 3rd year or right after your internship, and then give these exams preferably before September end. Because worst case, if you want to give it a second time, you'll have enough time to prepare and then give it once more. Now, GRE typically requires a couple of months of preparation, I would say, for a typical NITK student. And TOEFL, if you have a good grasp of the English language, would require a maximum of 2 weeks of preparation, is what I've heard. Again, all of these are personal opinions. And take care not to overdo these preparations. An extremely high score wouldn't add too much to your application, I guess. Try to give one good solid attempt and have a cutoff in mind for yourself. I kept a cutoff of 325 plus and 112 plus for GRE and TOEFL respectively. And after my first attempt, I got it, I would say. So I only gave one. So yeah, try to give one good attempt and wrap it up. Now get your letter of recommendations sorted early in your final semesters. Reach out to all of them and establish a clear timeline and a process for sending reminders and stuff, because professors are usually extremely busy. So you need to make sure that you have a good system to keep reminding them before the deadline so that they do submit it before the date is up. The last thing would be apply for transcripts by September. Once you received your 3rd year grade card, if you're applying in your final year, once you receive your 3rd year grade card, apply for it, because it's usually a big hassle to get it from the academic department, and you're almost always better off applying early and getting it in your hands as soon as possible. It takes, I think, 20 to 21 working days, which would mean roughly a month or a month and a half in NITK terms. So make sure you get it on time. Next slide. Right, now I'll talk a bit about some things related to MSCS applications particularly. One thing that a lot of people have a question about is publications. Now, how much focus is given on publications depends a lot on the program itself and whether you're applying to a thesis-based program or a master's with respect to coursework or something like that. And nowadays, it's not that hard to get a publication in the first place. So just having a publication in your profile wouldn't be as valuable, I would say. It depends more on how well it relates to your profile and how well it reflects your ability to do research. But then again, they definitely do help, but I'm not sure to what extent it is. And it's a very dicey subject when it comes to MSCS applications. So yeah, if you have a publication, please feel free to talk about it and yeah, all that. Another thing is that general concern is that the exact rank of the university does not matter. Although it is good to look at rankings to get a rough idea of where the university lies, especially when you're ranking them in your preference. Don't just stick to like top 10 schools or top 5 schools or something like that. Because especially for tech, the top few schools, the exact ranking does not matter. So try to find a good fit instead of applying to only the top few programs just for a good rank. Another thing is which components are important, which ones aren't. The general consensus I've heard from both professors that I've talked to and a lot of the seniors is that your letter of recommendation is probably going to be the most important factor, because recommendations are basically an endorsement from a professor. So if you can get a hold of a really good professor, say the university you want to apply to, and if you work under them for a consistent, solid amount, and if they give you a letter of recommendation, that can be the deal breaker in your application. And also SOPs are also quite important because they reflect who you are as a person, and it's written by you itself. One more thing is if you have a really good class rank, it's also a good indicator of your academic performance. On the other hand, the exact GRE score importance is going down more and more, and most universities have even made it optional. So that, and the exact GPA you get is also not that important if it's high enough. The reason being, GPA is a very widely distributed metric, because some of them, some universities have extremely easy lenient GPA scales, and some of them are very hard. So the exact GPA you get is not a big deal breaker as much as what is your class rank or what are the other components in your application. So make sure that you focus more on the important important components, and don't worry too much about these scores and grades and stuff. Now try to make your application focused on a specific field or topic. Don't try to be a jack of all trades in CS and say you've done everything, because that would mean that you have not given specific focus on everything. And universities typically want someone who's strong in something or the other. So try to make your application focused so that it gets picked up by the right people, it gets reviewed by the right people, and then if they're impressed by you, they'll take you in. Now, one last thing is I applied to only 4 places, and the general advice is to apply to a specific set of places, say 10 of them, where you have a good distribution of dream schools, reach schools, and safe schools. So the reason being, I also had an exact list like that, where I had some dream schools, some reach schools, and some safe schools. And these will be explained later on by the other speakers. But the reason I didn't apply to all of them is because by the time my applications rolled in, I had a really good chance of getting into Georgia Tech because I worked there for over a year and a half. So once I had my rank list, I did not apply to any program below Georgia Tech in terms of my preference, because even if I got any of those, since I kind of had a confirmation that I was going to get Georgia Tech, the others would just be a waste of effort and time for me. And I would rather spend my time on the other applications. But this is a very, very, very personal choice that I took, and it's not something that everybody has to follow. And I know people who apply to more programs even after they're getting a confirmation. So this is a very personal choice, and yeah, that's why I applied to only 4 places, especially at the very top above Georgia Tech in my preference order, and did not apply to anything below that. But this is, again, a very personal choice. Next slide. Right. So just to wind up, what is the right time to start thinking about masters and application and timeline? Well, if you're in your third year, the answer is, or if you just finished your third year, the answer is now. Start doing your research, start finding out which schools you want to apply to, and begin the process, and get going basically. Now, this is a year-long effort, so don't get anxious about the timeline or don't get held up by small setbacks. Uh, keep up the momentum. It's very, very important to keep a steady progress going on, because that's what counts at the end. And an extremely, extremely helpful tip that I found was to find a really good peer group to go through the whole process. I had excellent friends who kept motivating each other to go through the whole application period. And that's why I think I managed to do it without any stress or hassle. And make sure that if things get too hectic or the anxiety gets to you, which it usually will, take a break from the whole application process for a few days and then come back to it with a fresh start. No application is worth sacrificing your mental health over. I guess that's it from my side. Next slide. Please feel free to contact me if you have any doubts or anything like that. My contact details are here. And yeah, all the best for all of your applications. And I hope you get into the schools you want to.
Okay, thank you, Mohit. I think that was really insightful. So, Mohit, I think touched upon most of the points, actually pretty much everything that is really needed to start off your master's application. Obviously, like you mentioned, everybody's master's application is going to be different. Everyone does end up taking a different journey. So it's about just following a specific set of guidelines, and then obviously structuring a master's application to better fit yourself and obviously give you a better chance of applying. Some universities that explicitly offer that specialization, sometimes where so personally I'm doing a master's of science in software engineering, so it's not a master's in computer science. It is a more specialized software engineering course. So again, you'll have either like some sort of internal sort of specialization, implicit sort of specialization, or it's explicitly stated in your degree that you're doing a master's in software engineering. Ultimately, that is again based on your interest. So hopefully by now you should have an idea of what you really want to do and how you want to go about your interest. And again, yeah, so he spoke about keeping an adequate time for your GRE. In case you don't get a second attempt, in case you do want to get a second attempt for your GRE, you would obviously want to write your GRE a little bit earlier. So think about that. I think, yeah, some obviously spoke about the application deadlines. Some colleges actually have early priority or early decisions, so where they want like the most interested students, or they're giving you an opportunity to come and give submit your application and show your interest. So be mindful of those deadlines also. Some colleges do have normal deadlines, and some colleges do have early decisions and early admission deadlines. Yeah, and again, he spoke about LORs, obviously having a good recommender and everything. Do sometimes having a really generic LOR from a professor who doesn't really know you actually can hurt your application rather than help it. So please do ensure that your letter of recommendation is from someone that can give you a glowing recommendation and won't come across as generic or something that you'd have a format and you just copy paste your name or something like that. And yeah, split your applications. Obviously, it's very important. Have safety universities, have target universities, and obviously you can have reach universities. But it's important to split your applications across a wide range so that you have a better chance. Mohit spoke about how he had a good chance at Georgia Tech, so he applied to colleges that are higher ranked or have better programs in Georgia Tech because he kind of knew that he was going to get into, or he had a good fair shot at Georgia Tech. But for some people, most people, it might not be like that. So obviously, split your applications is important. Um, yeah, we'll just go through some questions. So Pramoda wanted to know if the Georgia Tech online masters is worth it. So maybe Mohit can answer this question more specifically. In my opinion, I'd say obviously an in-campus masters is gives you is obviously more beneficial and will obviously be more geared towards your interests, and obviously would have much more course content than what you'd see from an online perspective. But if you really want to go for something online, there are genuinely good online masters programs that are very reputed and that are well recognized. Mohit, do you maybe want to talk about the online program specifically if you've maybe done your research in it?
Right. I did not delve too much into the online master's program, but I've known a lot of people who've done it. And me personally, I would rather have the on-campus experience of doing the master's degree. But there are cases where it's more suitable. For example, people who are working and also want to complete a master's degree or something like that. So in that case, it might help, but I wouldn't claim to be an expert on online master's degrees, I guess, even from Georgia Tech itself. I don't know how well it compares to the on-campus program, but for me, it's not exactly my cup of tea. And if the question is more about is it worth it, then worth it depends on what we're talking about in terms of what. So yeah, I guess it's very, very tailored towards your preferences, I
And
guess.
typically, also, when you look at online programs, they're usually for working professionals or someone who wants to do a degree part time, but coming straight out of college or wanting to do a dedicated master's, a dedicated PhD, like after if you want to do something dedicated and you want to do it full time, typically you don't go for online courses. Online is usually for people who are working professionals. Maybe they want to do a part-time MBA and as with their profession. So then you would find people opting for these online courses. Yeah. So how much is it to cost? So she had another question. How much is it? How much does it cost to apply? Typically, so I applied to the US. Typically, US based applications, the application fee comes to around $75 to $100, and then to send your GRE score and your TOEFL scores across can come to anywhere between $25 to $50 to send your scores. And then obviously you have the actual GRE test and the GRE test itself, which is, if I'm not mistaken, must be around $150 to $200. Am I right? Uh, it should be around that much. Yeah, both the tests are around. So it is a pretty costly endeavor, especially if you want to go to the US. That's why it is very important to pick your colleges properly. And then obviously Mohit spoke about how you have the option to send your GRE scores to 4 universities. So pick wisely. We'll move on to the next speaker. So again, Atlanta being a safe space is something that, you know, it's a personal opinion. You're gonna have to do the research yourself. Obviously, if you've never been there, and it's about, you can obviously talk to the various seniors that have gone to these places. So we'll move on to the next speaker. So we have Prajna from IT, who will be speaking about applying for a PhD and what her experience was and how she went about the entire process. So Prajna, yeah, you can go for it. You can go for it.
Hi, everybody. Thank you so much for tuning in today. I will be talking about the PhD application process. I am an incoming PhD student at UC Santa Cruz in the biomolecular engineering and bioinformatics discipline, with more focus on the bioinformatics part of things. So to get started, I will just give you a brief overview of my profile. I was in the IT department here. The CGPA that I've calculated is my major CGPA. And I had a GRE score of 328, TOEFL of 115. And yeah, like I said, my field of interest is computational biology, and it kind of encompasses bioinformatics, health, and medical informatics as well. I and the others are my stats in terms of posters and papers. So I think I would say that the last 3 points are what you should focus more on when you're developing your application for a PhD. Your GPA doesn't really matter much in these applications, because a PhD is not about you taking courses. It's about you being able to do research, to be able to show them that you have the aptitude for working on problems for a longer duration of time, and then being able to make some being able to present them in terms of posters and presentations and such. Moving on, I worked with a lot of professors over my BTech. I think I learned early in second year that I wanted to do a PhD in computational biology, because I mean, I wanted to study computational biology is what I kind of realized in early second year. And I worked towards that goal throughout the next 3 years of my PhD, and I mean, of my BTech. And I think somewhere in third year, I realized that I wanted to do a PhD and not just a master's. So I can just talk a bit about how that came across. So yeah, like I said, so when I realized in second year that I wanted to do a PhD, that I wanted to study computational biology, I started kind of getting research experience in different subfields of the subject to see which part of the subject I liked best, what kind of projects I liked working on, what kind of mentors I liked working with, and such. So moving on. So I applied to a lot of places. You don't have to apply to so many. I think for me, the reason why I applied to a lot of places was because of it was mainly two. One is that I didn't want to. I mean, I was I was not very confident about being able to get into these programs, because a lot of these, I mean, because all PhD programs are funded, and a lot of these PhD programs prefer people from their own country to be. So, for example, Berkeley has around 12 seats, and they take in around 10 of them are U.S. citizens, and 2 of them are international citizens. So, most of these programs are like that. So, I, being an international student, I was not very confident about my ability to get in. And another is that I wanted options, because at the end of the day, I want to be able to work with someone that I know for a fact is the best mentor for me, and not just because that was the only program I got into. So I wanted to have my pick of mentors at the end. And I will also talk a bit about the differences between programs in the US and in Europe later on in my talk. So the first step in in this process is to decide whether you want to do a PhD or if you want to do a master's first before you do a PhD. So that all of this starts with the fact with you needing to ask yourself if you're interested in research. If you're not sure, try to see if you are interested in the tech industry. So maybe do an internship in your winter or in your second year summer. See if that is the kind of work you like, if you want to become a software engineer. If you are sure that you're interested in research, again, get in research internships to ensure that, okay, this is exactly what you want to do, because doing research is a very, very difficult process. You might fail multiple times. You might not like certain projects that you're on. So ensure that you get projects so that you can ensure that you get projects such that you will be able to know for a fact that research is what you like. So once you know research is what you like, you need to decide whether you need a master's or a PhD. I think I had mainly two motivating factors in choosing a PhD over a master's. One is purely financial, because all PhD programs in the US and in Europe, and I think in most other places as well, are fully funded. So they pay your tuition, they pay for your health or dental insurance, and they also pay you a stipend with which you can live comfortably in that place. So they're fully funded. Another A master's, however, you will have to shell out a lot from your pocket, even though there are scholarships and RATAships available. In many cases, you'll have to shell out a lot from your pocket. So that is a little, a bit more of a bigger decision to take financially. That's all. Secondly, a master's is another stepping stone. So, like, I thought it would also take me like extra time, because in the US, a PhD is about 5 to 6 years, and most people, regardless of if they have a master's or not, end up taking this amount of time. So, doing extra 2 years of master's would just mean that by the time I get my PhD, it'll be 8 years from now. Whereas if I just start my PhD directly from 5 to 6 years from now, I can have my PhD. So these were two reasons, and these were my reasons because I knew for a fact that even after a master's, I'd be doing a PhD for sure. So that's why my reasons were more just geared towards looking at the pros and cons between the two. But if you are not sure if a PhD is your end goal, then I definitely do not dive into this, because the application process is difficult, and doing a PhD is a very, very, very difficult process. So it isn't something you should just put yourself in because you don't know what else to do. So, like, don't decide to do a PhD because you're not sure what to do in life. So that's definitely not something you should be doing. Okay, so now you know you want to do a PhD. What next? First step is you want to shortlist universities. So how do you shortlist universities? First thing, you read as many papers as you can on your subfields of interest. So for me, it is computational genetics and genomics. So what I did was I read as many papers as I could on these subfields, and I started noticing names that kind of kept cropping up repeatedly, both professors and affiliated universities. So you get to know that these professors do really top notch research in the field, or this university has a bunch of professors who do great research in this field. So you get to know a lot of these names. Then you also have to talk to your current research supervisors, because they'll definitely know what kind of university is good for what kind of field. One thing I would definitely stress upon for PhD applications is do not go by general university ranking for your subject. So, like, if I go by general university ranking for CS, that is not at all useful for me, because my field is a kind of like an application or an auxiliary field of CS. So, going by CS rankings doesn't really make sense for me. Rather, you need to look at the process as if you are shortlisting professors that you want to work under rather than university. And one thing that I always talk about is using scientific Twitter to your advantage. So scientific Twitter is basically all these academics posting about their papers, about opportunities in their groups and such. And when you get to form this network of researchers that you might actually be interested in their research, or at least might be interested in talking to them and getting to know more about opportunities in and around their labs. So it's very useful. So with all these, you've shortlisted universities now. What is your next step? Pre-application inquiries and interviews. This is something very different from a master's application. At least I don't know if masters also done this, but I definitely did this for my PhD applications because it is absolutely necessary. So what this is that in the pre-application period, that is, so application deadlines are usually in November, December. So early in September-ish, I reached out to professors who I was interested to work in, and I talked to them about my previous research. I told them I've done so and so, I've worked with so and so, and I thought I read your recent paper on this topic, and I really like the general direction that your lab is going in. So I kind of explained my interest in their lab to them, and I tried to ask them. So I'm a potential. I'll probably be applying to your university for this program. Do you think you will have a space in your lab for a PhD student then, or do you think that we can have a conversation about it sometime? So just reach out to them, talk to them, see if you can get schedule a Zoom call or something to just discuss your application with them. And these kind of pre-application interviews are very informal, so you just have to talk to them about your research, and just make a good first impression, because they will remember your name for when they're kind of actually reviewing the applications later in December or January. They will be like, oh, I spoke to this candidate back in September. They seem to know what they were doing. They seem to be very interested in my group, so I'm going to push this applicant's application forward. And in some programs, as it was the case for me in Brown and University of British Columbia, professors have complete authority over who they take into their labs, as long as you know have the minimum GPA, minimum GRE score, and such. So in both of these programs, I had reached out to professors early in September and talked to them. They really liked me, so I ended up actually getting into the programs. I mean, I knew for a fact that I'd be getting to the programs because these programs are structured in a way that the professors have complete authority. It doesn't hold good for all programs, but it is very, very helpful regardless. And one more thing is that it helps a lot to kind of get inside information about the program and the and to get just to get to know these professors in general with these pre-application interviews. Okay, now that you've spoken to these professors, spoken to these professors that you'll be working with, what do you do next? Um, the actual application process. So Mohit mentioned, so I won't go too deep into like the requirements, but you need your transcript, TOEFL scores, statement of purpose, personal statement, your CV or resume, and 3 to 5 LORs. 3 is minimum in most cases. Some places ask for more than 3. Sometimes you also have essays based on prompts, some things called diversity statement, and most PhD programs shortlist candidates for interviews based on the application. So you will have another stage to clear. So I will talk a bit about how you structure your statement of purpose. So I won't go too deep into it because there's enough resources online that you can take a look at. But just to give you in brief some idea about how to kind of structure your SOP. Next slide. Yeah. So first you need to ask yourself 2 questions. What do you want to work on? So like, if you say I want to work on machine learning, that is not something you can do a PhD on. It's a very very broad. It's a very very broad term. You can't work on every aspect of machine learning in your PhD. It kind of also shows that you've not really delved deeper to find your interest. So hone in on a specific research area that you want to do. It could be multiple. You could have like multiple niche interests. That's also fine. They don't expect you to have decided what you want to do in your PhD before you come in. But they also want to see that you know what the field is about. You have some brief idea about what you want to do. Then you also need to be able to answer why you are applying, like why do you want a PhD and not a master's, or why you want a PhD in this particular university. So this is the structured format. These slides will be shared later on, so you can take a look at them. I won't go through them at this point. Couple of other points that I want you to keep in mind when you look at your SOP are: tailor it to the university specifically. So you need to be a good fit for Stanford. You don't need Stanford to think, okay, this student is good, but I don't think the students' principles and values match with the principles and values we have here at Stanford. So if you write a very generic SOP for every university, you can end up with not matching with certain universities, even if you are a really good candidate for them. Obviously, don't lie, avoid cliches, and avoid fillers of any kind. Always take every single word in your SOP has to be very impactful, very strong, very specific, and get it reviewed by about 2 to 3 people. It's very important that some people review your SOPs. I always got mine reviewed by professors and current grad students that I worked with. This is mainly because they have been on the other side of the application process, right? They have actually reviewed applications and they've decided which ones are good and bad. But if that's not possible, at least get them done by seniors who have written successful SOPs of their own. So either of this works really well. Moving on to how do you ask for LORs. So I would say ask as early as possible and ask specifically if they can write you a very strong letter of recommendation. And then the moment if you sense any sort of initial hesitation from them, don't push. Just back out, ask someone else for your letter. For a PhD, try to ask letters from professors with whom you have done research with for at least 6 months. And letters from professors who have taught your classes are not going to be strong enough for your PhD application, because again, a PhD is not about taking classes, it's about being able to do research. And then sometimes in India, professors ask you to write the first draft of the letter. So in this case, reach out to seniors, because a lot of your seniors would have done this before. Some other points in the same LOR space are, yeah, obviously, I think Mohit also mentioned this. Having a famous or a well-known researcher backing your application is very, very, very powerful. But at the same time, if you took a class with a very famous professor versus you did 12 months of research with a not so well-known professor, I would say go with the second professor for your LOR because they know your research well. But if you've done research with a very well-known professor, you're golden. You have a really good recommendation, which will take you through in a lot of places. Help out the recommender as much as possible. Give them information on the programs you're applying to, your statement of purpose, your CV, and all the deadlines for every program, so that they can stay on top of things and you can stay on top of things. And the third, and one thing that I'd like to emphasize is that if you're very close to your recommenders, ask them to highlight different aspects of your research persona. So all of your letters don't have any repetitions and they are complementary to each other, and they give the admission committee more to kind of judge you over than just 3 letters which just talk about how hardworking you are or how much attention to detail you pay. Like if that makes sense. Next slide. Yeah, this is just about making an academic CV. Very generic points. You can take a look at it later on as well. Next slide. Yeah, some other things to keep in mind. So application deadlines are different for different universities. So keep them all in a Google Calendar so that you don't miss out on an application, submitting an application just because you thought its deadline was some other day. And always keep checking to see if recommenders have submitted their letters, and give them a couple of reminders if they don't. But don't overdo it. Don't annoy your recommenders by giving them like daily reminders. They're busy. They probably would have kept a Google Calendar reminder themselves, but just in case, you can remind them just for your own sanity, but don't overdo it. And then if you've had a good pre-application conversation with a professor at your program, remember to mention their name in your application, because this routes your application to them and it gives it more chances of being seen. And then leverage any type of academic connections that you have to any professors or ongoing projects in the program, because this will just give you a foot inside the door in a way. Moving on. Now that you've applied to the programs, what's next? Interviews. So all PhD programs have interviews regardless of where they are. So first you will need to introduce yourself and give like brief background about yourself. Not every interviewer would be very familiar with your application. So sometimes if you have like 3 professors that you mentioned in your application that you want to work with, they would have gone through your application, but we would have a 4th interviewer who doesn't really know your application very well interviewing you. So in this case, you'll need to introduce yourself. So have like a 5-minute talk, a 10-minute talk, and a 30-minute talk prepared, and be able to talk about your research to someone who isn't directly doing the same thing as you. So if you're doing computer vision, be ready to explain your research to someone from systems. Obviously, they will know the basics, so you don't have to like dumb it down too much. But again, be able to explain it succinctly to someone who's not very familiar with it. Read papers of every professor who's interviewing you, and also those who might have space in their labs. Show you're familiar with research currently being done. Show that you know how to ask intelligent questions about their research. Ask them about what they plan to do next, and so on. Next slide. Yeah, research the school as much as possible and generate questions about the university as well. So like if there are certain programs in the university, for me, for example, diversity initiatives are very important, so I would ask a lot about that. And yeah, there are other questions as well, like why do you want to come here, what do you want to do 5 to 10 years after your PhD and such. Always these generic questions. Be ready with answers for them. And especially in Skype and Zoom interviews, it's better to be overdressed than under. So I always wore a blazer for my interviews. I felt like I was the most overdressed person in most of my interviews, but I think it gives you a bit more confidence than finding out that you're underdressed. And US program interviews are usually in the middle of the night, so get some sleep during the day to ensure that you look alert and active. Obviously, they will cut you some slack because they'll ask you what time is it first thing, and then you go 3 a.m. They're like, oh, it's 3 a.m. But regardless, try to look alert and active because it shows how much interest you have in the program. Next. Okay, now that you finished your interviews, this is probably the most difficult time. At least it was more difficult than application season also for me, because it's a very, very anxiety-ridden period of time. Stay strong, have a strong support system to help you, especially through particularly difficult phases where everyone's hearing back from places, but you're not hearing back from anywhere. So having a safety school always helps. One place where you know for a fact that you will get in, and you're actually happy to go there as well. So having such a safety school will always help you. Remember that rejections and waitlists are a part of the process. You cannot skip over them. Don't get too disheartened. Once in a while, you will get a rejection. Once in a while, you will get a waitlist. Ensure you have a backup option like a research assistantship or a job. They will also help you strengthen your application if you decide to apply next year. And keep up some hobbies to ensure that your mind is occupied, and then focus on your health. Always focus on your health. Don't let your health slip just because you're stressed or anxious about application results. Okay, now you have multiple PhD offers. How do you decide? First of all, congratulations. If you have multiple PhD offers, that is amazing. So I personally use this order to decide between programs. So I gave most importance to the professor that I'll be working with, then to the research area or the projects that I'll be working with, then to the university ranking or reputation, and lastly to the funding and the quality of life factors. So like some university which are in more expensive parts of the US, their stipends are equivalent to some universities that are in the less expensive part. So your quality of life will drastically change between these two places. But for me, it was the last thing that I considered. But it could be something more important for you. So please change this. I would say professor is probably the one you should keep on top, professor and research area. But you can look at the university and the funding ones. I think you can decide what's more important according to you. But yeah, your guide is going to be one of the most important people in your entire academic life. So choose your guide wisely. Choose someone who is not only like a good researcher but also a good person and a good mentor. So you need your guide needs to be your mentor, your biggest supporter, your cheerleader, who will also push you to like better opportunities. Not just someone who is a legend in the field. So if you can find someone who is both very good for you, but uh, but also keep in mind that not every one is the same. And then talk to as many current PhD students of your prospective guide to get to know their advising style and what kind of a person they are, what their expectations are from their graduate students. Next slide. Yeah. So quickly, some tips from a professor that I got a couple of tips from a professor who has reviewed a lot of applications. So about 40 to 50% of applications that his PhD program receives are from Indian and Chinese applicants. So make sure your application first stands out here. Then mention your college ranking and what it takes to get into NITK, because there's a lot of Indian colleges and they know that not all of them are good. So then also ensure that your SOP and LORs are complementary and they don't have information that's not in each other. Um, and yeah, the application process is very random. It depends on many variables. So a rejection just might mean that okay, you're not a good fit for this particular university, but you could be a good fit for even for maybe a better university or some university on the same level. So don't take it personally. Don't take it to heart. And build your network during the process as well. So like you get to interview with a lot of professors, kind of try to strike up conversations and manage your relationship with them even after the process. And one more thing that he mentioned was for some reason they've noticed that musical talent has been highly correlated with good performance in PhD. So they look favorably if you have like some instrument, if you play an instrument or something like that. If you have that on your resume, for some reason it looks really good. So keep that in mind if you are a musical instrumentist. Yeah. Yeah, thank you so much for listening. Good luck with your applications. I'm Prajna, and I am reachable on WhatsApp and email all the time. So let me know if you have any questions. Thank you.
Um, okay, guys, so that was Prajna. I think a lot of people had questions about research internships, Prajna, because they all wanted to know
Yeah.
how exactly you could get a research internship. I think some were asking if they should focus on, if they should focus on internship season more than research internships. So I think maybe if you could talk a little bit about how exactly you would go about getting a research internship and how exactly would it help, maybe it would benefit them. So go ahead.
Yeah, so definitely. So for getting research internships, there are a lot of programs that are there currently. So a lot of the IITs have their own research internship programs. There is DADWISE and MITAX, which are research internship programs from Germany and Canada, respectively. So there are a lot of these research internship programs which you can apply through. However, all of my research internships have been through cold mailing. So basically, I go to the website of the professor that I'm interested in working with. I read about their research. I then email them saying, "Hi, I'm Prajna. I want to work with you for so and so reason." So I've mainly done cold mailing. So I think I can definitely talk to you a bit more about that off, like for anybody that has this question offline, so I should not take up too much time. But my research internships have all been through cold mailing. And in terms
Live streaming is on.
yeah. So I was answering the question about whether we'll be focusing on whether you should focus on internship season or on getting research internships. That's a very personal question you need to ask yourself. So I personally decided to skip internship season altogether because I knew for a fact that research was what I wanted to do. I wanted to apply for like either a master's or PhD, and I knew the field that I wanted to work in. So for me, it was a very easy decision. There are some people like Mohit actually did both the research internship and he also got into Goldman Sachs and worked with Goldman Sachs over the summer. So it's very it's up to you, I would say, but don't do it like me if you're not 100% sure if research is what you want to do. So like skipping the internship season and doing only research internships is something you should do only if you're 100% confident that research is what you're going to be doing for your future. So that's what I would say, I think. Yeah, Akshat, anything else?
I think that's it from questions.
Okay.
So I think somebody has asked, can the GPA criteria can be overridden by a stronger research background? So
Yeah, definitely. My GPA is not that great. So when you calculate GPA for PhD programs, especially, you remove your first year GPAs because your first year courses are not very relevant to your like what you're studying. So overall, my GPA isn't stellar. It's not over 9 or anything like that. But I think in general, if you have a great research profile, if you have great recommendations, because if they know you can do research, but you're bad at taking courses, you're still a good candidate for a PhD. But if you are good at taking courses but not good at doing research, then you're not good. Then you're not a good candidate for a PhD. So that's how they will look at it. Having a very, very low GPA, however, is a red flag. So that I'm not sure if it can override, but having an average GPA for sure it can be um, overridden by having a good research profile. Yeah.
okay, yeah. So yeah, I had seen a lot of questions about GPA, guys. You can even get into a good master's program or a good program with a 7 GPA, 7.5 GPA. It's really about how you justify what you've done in college and how really you've put together your profile. Your GPA is just a set of numbers ultimately, and colleges even know that. Maybe in India, maybe in certain other countries, they do have some sort of uh, they do give some sort of value to it, but there are many universities, many programs who don't even like, they just look at it for its face value. They don't really consider, because they know sometimes you might have to take courses that are compulsory, and you might not be really interested in them, studying them, but it might be compulsory from college, or you don't really have that much freedom in course choice. So having a average enough GPA, I'd say maintain an 8. That would be a really good GPA to apply to. But don't be worried if it's a 7, 7.5. It's perfectly all right. Just make sure you have a good profile to build on. Yeah. So we'll move on to Avikal, who will be talking about how how it would be possible to move from core to circuit. I know there must be a lot of mechanical, civil, the other core branches who might decide and say, what, maybe I do want to work in computer science, but I didn't get the opportunity, or maybe I really wanted to work in computer science in the first place, but I never got the seat at NITK or any other college, so I was forced to take mechanical civil. So obviously you can transition. It's very easy to do it if you know the right steps, if you know how to build a profile. And Avikal will be talking about it. So Avikal, yeah, you can go ahead.
Yeah, thank you, Mohit. Thank you, Prajna. Akshat, can you confirm if I'm audible?
Yeah, you're audible.
All right, great. So I'll try keeping my presentation short and crisp. So hey guys, I'm Avikal Sagar from the batch of 2022 NITK. And as Akshat mentioned, I will be addressing a certain section of the audience, basically the people who are interested in switching from core to CSIT or slightly computational fields. A bit about myself. I graduated with a major in civil engineering and a minor in information technology. You can see my GRE and TOEFL scores here. I had 4 internships in total, 3 research internships and 1 corporate internship. At the time of applying, I had 2 research papers in hand. And so talking about my fields of interest, they lie within machine learning, deep learning, computer vision, and their applications specifically within a few core subjects like geospatial technology, computational mechanics, environmental and energy engineering. So that's a bit about me. Next slide, please. Yeah, talking about the universities and programs I applied to, you can see I applied to around 10 to 11 universities, all for an MS degree. And so, as I mentioned previously, I have interests within machine learning and data science, but I like implementing these CS concepts specifically within a few core engineering subjects. And hence, you can see that I've chosen such combination of programs that I've applied to, mainly MS in geospatial data science, MS in computational mechanics, or MS in systems engineering. And yeah, I received admits from around 10 out of 11 universities, and the only reject I received was from Cornell. I have finalized Columbia University. I will be joining Columbia in the coming fall, and yeah, I will be doing Masters of Science in Computational and Data-Driven Engineering Mechanics. I will discuss more about this a bit later on. Next slide, please. Yeah, so this is a question that I am very frequently asked. Why did I transition? And I'm pretty sure a lot of people from core would be curious to know why I did. So first of all, yeah, so in pure core subjects of civil, I just seem to find it very boring and very dry. So there was a lack of interest from my side in pure core subjects, and I think it's not surprising, but there are lesser job and internship opportunities. And during my second year, these were the two main reasons why I was slightly deviating away from pure civil engineering subjects. Since I had a minors in IT, which starts in your third semester at NITK, I started getting into coding. I started off with simple subjects like DSA, DBMS, and learning coding languages like Python, C++. And I picked it up very quickly, but at the same time, yet again, I was not interested in pure coding too. Rather, during a couple of research projects by the end of my second year, I found out that I was very interested in applying these programming concepts within core subjects because I was doing a lot of projects that involved predictions, classifications, and even experimental simulations. So I was basically using the CSIT concepts and then implementing it within certain core engineering fields. And because of the nature of the projects I was doing, I found myself very interested in such fields, basically what you call interdisciplinary tracks. And that's when I decided that if I have to pursue an MS degree in the future, it would be in such interdisciplinary tracks itself. And one more main reason is that you know that there are fields like biotechnology, bioinformatics, which Prajna is into. Then there are other fields like environmental sustainability, mechatronics, business analytics, materials informatics, and these are fields that are upcoming. And the demand for people with interdisciplinary skills, basically CSIT plus code plus pure science skills, is on the rise because there are more and more jobs, rising in such fields where your employers want you not to be good in just coding, not to be good in just core subjects, but to have both sets of skills. So with such fields rising, I thought it was the perfect time to do my master's in a similar subject. And of course, when you get into a field like this, you will get exposed to multiple industries. Of course, the pay might be slightly better, and you get to work on much more interesting and dynamic jobs. So all of these factors combined is the reason why I transitioned. It was not an easy transition, and that's why in the next slide, Nishant, I will be covering how I transitioned. So again, a very frequently asked question for anyone trying to transition from core to CSIT is how exactly do you do it? Uh, so I think the previous speakers have mentioned this early. If you're looking forward to applying for masters or PhD, then you have to start very early. Similarly, here as well, you need to start very early, probably by the end of your second year or by the beginning of your third year. And the best way to start off is by upskilling or by skill developments in relevant fields. So I made sure that during my undergraduate, during my BTech, I took the right combination of courses. So through my IT minors, I did DSA, parallel computing, DBMS, data analytics, and machine learning. And at the same time, I took electives. Since I come from an ML background, I mean, since I'm going towards an ML background, I need certain mathematic courses too, such as probability, statistics, linear algebra. So again, I took the right set of electives from the math department as well, and I made sure that the fields that I was interested in within core, I scored well in those two, and those were basically mechanics, environmental sciences, geospatial technology. So having the right skills in these courses, or having the right skills in your field of interest is like the first step. You need to know the right combination of courses, and that's the key to transition, and start off as early as possible. In case you don't have a minors, in case your department doesn't provide such electives, you can always do such courses online, such as on Coursera, Udemy, and other pretty good online websites. So yeah, having the right combination of courses is the key to transition. Second is, in case you are trying to switch into CS or IT, or into a slightly computational field, it's very important to have a good GPA in both your major and minor, especially if your minor is tending towards that field, basically IT in my case. So yeah, I found out that having a good GPA really mattered. I wouldn't say my GPA was very high, but anything 8.5 plus and close to 9 or 9 plus is preferred by universities. And trust me, universities thoroughly assess your grade card, especially if you're getting into an interdisciplinary track. So I'll give you an example. In one of the colleges that I applied to, Imperial College London, uh, I basically applied for the Master of Science program in Environmental Data Science and Machine Learning. And a few colleges have interview rounds as well before you get your admit. So during my interview round, the professor who was interviewing me literally took out my transcript and started asking me about the subjects I did in IT minors and relevant subjects in civil majors. He asked me why I scored good in one subject, why bad in the other, and he also asked me a lot of questions related to why I took that particular combination of electives. And that's when I realized that universities thoroughly assess your grades, especially if you're applying for an interdisciplinary track. You need to show that coming from a core engineering field, you do have a good amount of skills that can help you transition to CS and IT. So in cases like us, people trying to transition from core to CSIT, I think both GPAs matter equally. Then yeah, coming to internships and projects, once you have good GPA, once you have the right skills and courses, I think it's time to utilize them, right? So you start off by doing projects and relevant internships. I did a couple of internships at IITs, and as you can see, these are again quite interdisciplinary. It's all machine learning and deep learning, but within core subjects like environmental engineering or geoinformatics. Even here in college, for my research project and for my major project in my department, I made sure that I selected professors who provided an opportunity to work in ML and deep learning, even if the problem statement is within mechanics or remote sensing and geoinformatics or any other field like that. So I made it very clear that if I have to work in projects and if I have to take up internships, it has to be relevant to the field I'm looking forward to pursuing in the future. And hence, I made sure that I got internships in such uh, interdisciplinary fields. Yeah, so a list of all the internships and the fields have been mentioned over here. You can go through them in the slide. The last point is having research papers in reputed journals. So yeah, I think the other speakers have already covered this before, but here as well, it is important to get amazing results from the internships you do. Get one or two research papers. It's fine if your papers are still under review at reputed journals at the time of applying. It will definitely boost your chances of getting an admit. And yeah, so these are the 4 or 5 major ways in which I felt I could transition very well from CS to a computational field. Next slide, Nishant. Yeah, so this is like a roadmap that all of you can follow. It's basically a summary of whatever I've spoken about in the last 3 or 4 slides. So the first step is always identifying your fields of interest from CSIT. For example, I did a lot in machine learning, deep learning, computer vision. And yeah, you have to identify your fields of interest. CSIT is very, very broad. You have networking, you have systems, security systems, you have machine learning, data science, software engineering. So you have to identify what exactly you want to pursue. Keep it very specific. Make sure that you know what you want to pursue in the future, and hence select that particular field as your interest field. So do that as early as possible. That's the first step. Second step is to develop relevant skills in these fields. Third is to get proper projects and internships and publish papers. Fourth is where you start shortlisting your universities and courses. So you have to do a lot of research about like what type of universities provide you an opportunity with such MS degrees. So most of the universities provide you MSCS or MSIN, stuff like that. But a lot of other universities in recent times have also started providing you with an option to pursue such interdisciplinary MS programs like the ones I applied to. You have to do your own research for it. Make sure to check out if all the top US colleges provide you with such interdisciplinary tracks and if it suits you. And yeah, selecting that particular course is also very important. So you have to do that first. Then comes the remaining component of your application, getting your GRE TOEFL done as quickly as possible. That's already been covered previously in this session. Making your resume, again, follow the standard guidelines to make a resume. Keep it within 2 pages for universities in the US. Quantify your resume as much as possible. So since you're stepping into a very computational field, into a CSIT field, make sure that while you're describing the projects, while you're talking about the technical details of your projects in your resume, you quantify it very well with the results you've obtained. I think it's a must if you're applying to such fields. Drafting recipes, of course, you can follow the standard guidelines you have to make one SOP. But for people like me trying to transition, I had to describe my entire journey in my SOP. It gave me an opportunity to explain why I was transitioning, how I transitioned. So all of that I had to put very properly, like in a very good manner in the SOP, so as to convince the professors or whoever in the admission committee of that particular university that yes, I am ready to step out into the world of CSIT or computational sciences. So SOP provides you a platform to explain how you can how you have transitioned or why you want to transition, and it's really good if you can like describe your journey. And definitely SOP was one of the most important parts of my components of my application. Getting LORs, again, get LORs from relevant professors. And yeah, I think after that it's time you apply to universities. After you're done, I think you'll still have at least 2 months before you receive your first set of results. So in that time, you can start making a priority list of colleges. Basically, as Mohit mentioned earlier, dream, reach, and safe schools. You can have that prepared, and as soon as you start getting the results, you can just strike off the ones where you have received reject from, and then from the ones you have received your admits, you can select which course and which university you would want to go to. So if you follow, in my opinion, if you follow this roadmap, it's going to be a very, very it's definitely going to boost your chances of getting an admit. And yeah, so now if you want to know what the how it looks after you get an admit, what you can expect once you get into your post graduation in such fields, then I have a slide prepared for that too. Nishant, next. Right. So I'm going to use my MS program at Columbia as an example. A lot of people would be excited to know what you can expect with such degrees. And so this is like a screenshot from Columbia's website for my MS program. As you can see, the courses are highly interdisciplinary. You have courses from the engineering mechanics department, from the mechanical department, a few of them. And then the other majority of the courses you have from the mathematics department, from the computer science department, and from the EC department. So again, you will get an exposure, or you will get an opportunity to try out different types of courses, pick electives from every type of department. And since your courses tend more towards CS and IT or computational stuff, you will have an opportunity to sit with CSIT kids, do courses like parallel computing, machine learning, data science, while at the same time also doing courses from your own department like finite element analysis, computation, polar mechanics. So if you are looking forward to doing an MS in such interdisciplinary fields, I think this is what you can expect I think this is what you can expect for your courses. Then again, you will be able to do research projects under both the departments. And finally, once you graduate, you can expect internships and jobs as the following, the ones I've listed over here, like geospatial data scientist, environmental analyst, a general ML engineer, also computational engineers, analytics consultants, or civil mechanical systems engineer. And all of this, I don't know about India, but in the US and in Europe, these are real jobs. Like these are real upcoming jobs, and with a great scope in the future. So once you have a master's of science degree from a very good university in such fields, it is definitely going to be very easy to get a job also in as in such fields. Yeah, so this was about how you can transition and what you can expect when you step out into such fields. And yeah, if there's anyone who has any doubts, they can put up in the comment section. You can also contact me. I've given you my email ID and phone number. So yeah, good luck with the applications, guys. I hope to see a lot more people trying to switch from civil, mechanical, chemical into CS and IT. All the best.
Yeah, thank you, Avikal. I think that was a I think that gave a really good idea as to how the students can obviously transition into the various different fields. I think that we have come to the end of our talk. I won't take much of your time. I know everyone wants to go watch the IPL match. Even I want to. So I think, yeah, hopefully you guys did get an idea of the entire process itself and how you can go about your master's application. I think we've covered everything as to what what interests you want and how exactly you pick your major, how you go about picking your colleges, what are the steps required, what are the tests, LORs, um, costs, if there are letters of recommend, statement of purpose, and research internships and various other projects you get into. I just want to tell everyone, one, being NITK students, we do have a very reputed name, so make sure, and we do have a lot of resources that are available to us. You're in a premier institution, use it wisely. You can use this college to help build your profile itself. Contact professors. The one thing professors love is interested students. So go to them, approach them. You can just approach a department, find out what are the active projects that are going on, see where you can contribute, and obviously what helps to build your profile. NITK is a very good place. It's an innovative place. There's always innovation happening in every corner. So please step out and find that innovation. You're not going to get any of that just sitting and waiting for it to come. You have to take the initiative to build your profile, and that starts from first to second year itself. Personally, so me, I'll just talk about a little bit about my application, just 1 minute. So I'm doing a MS in software engineering at Arizona State University. Personally, I'm interested in edutech, so education technology, coming up with prospective solutions and uh, computational solutions to education and help improving the quality of education as a whole. That is what I was passionate about. So why I picked ASU in particular and not maybe some of the higher ranked universities, even though I could apply as anything as such, was mainly because when you look at the work ASU's done in education technology, it's very reputed, and they have professors and other research groups that are focused on this sort of line of work. So when I did my research and I saw ASU as a really prospective place for me to attend, I really didn't look any other way. I think it captured my heart. And obviously, it's important. So, like I mentioned before, it's important for you to uh, pick your interests, not pick your interests, to pick your college based on your interests. Because I think all of us had mentioned, when you do get rejected from a college, it's not because you're not a good candidate. Most of the time, at least 95% of the time, it's only because you're not a good fit. Because I know people, you do tend to apply to colleges where you do think you have a fair shot of getting in. But if you don't end up getting it, it's not because that you're not a good candidate. It's only because that the college doesn't think you're a good fit, or they don't think that your interests align with theirs. So do pick a college where you know that you will have a good time, and obviously you're studying for 2 years. You should be enjoying that your life with this college ultimately. So don't pick a place where you feel more comfortable, which aligns with the interests, and where you can go and enjoy and have a fun time studying. That is more important. Yeah, so I think from all of us, I think that's covered everything, and we hope you guys are all successful in journeys. You can reach out to any of us. You'll find our details online, or just find us on socials. You can just Google our names; it'll probably come up. So good luck everyone with the applications, and hopefully we'll see you at our colleges soon. Thank you guys. Bye.
Thanks a lot. I'll be stopping the stream now.